Welcome to the first grade parent training for September of 2016. My name is Melinda Marshall, and I am the early reading interventionist here at Rock Prairie Elementary. I've been teaching language arts for 14 years now, and so I love teaching children to read. I love watching them grow. There's nothing better than watching them grow as lifelong readers. Today we're going to talk about how we can help your first grader at home with reading, as well as some of our College Station ISD resources that you can access and use from home. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some resources from CSISD, and I'm going to take you through the units of study for reading and writing. That is pretty much our curriculum, and then through the first grade and the College Station ISD high frequency words for all grade levels in case you need to go back or forward with whatever your child needs. Okay, so to access the curriculum, you're going to go to go.csisd.org. You can just type that in your search bar at the top, and it'll take you to this page. And what you want to do if you want to look at your child's curriculum is you just click on the curriculum tab. And then for Reading Language Arts, you're going to click on Reading Language Arts, and it's going to take you to the College Station ISD Reading Language Arts homepage. And so from here, there are going to be different grade level buttons that you can choose. For your sake, you're going to go ahead and go to first grade, and then it's going to give you some buttons to choose from. You can choose the printable curricular calendar, you can go to first sight words, or the College Station ISD high frequency word list for all grade level. But if you keep scrolling down, then it's going to give you some of those things. And so this is the first grade curricular calendar, which kind of gives you just a snapshot of the year. It's going to tell you the things that they're doing in reading and writing for each of the 9 weeks. If you continue to scroll, you'll see buttons for each subject. So you'll see some for reading, some for word study, and then some for writing. And if you scroll down until you see Unit 1, then you can click on that, and then it's going to take you to even more buttons for whatever session that your child is in. So if we go ahead and click on 1, it will take you to the actual lessons and activities that your child will be doing in the classroom. And so that's where you will find all of those resources. So if you scroll back up, you're going to see the same thing for word study as well as writing. And those are just going to be buttons that you click on, and then you can go and look at the lessons and all the ideas that your teachers have to go from to plan their lessons and those kinds of things. And so this button up here is for your first grade sight words. If you click on it, it's going to give you a list of the 76 high frequency words that your first grader will learn in first grade. And so these are the words that they should know before the end of the year. So this is a great list to have to work with them at home, have it out while they're writing, or even practice wherever you are, in the car, in the bathtub, because they're just sight words that they need to learn. And on this page, you will also see the high frequency words for all grade levels. So first grade will come up as a purplish blue color, and you can see all of the first grade words here. You can also go back to kindergarten words and make sure that they know those words, because those should have already been mastered. You can also even go up to second grade if they already know all their first grade words and give them a little head start on some of the second grade words, because there are a lot of them. And so that resource is there for you as well to use. Okay, so this is going to be the page where you're going to find most of the curriculum resources. And so if you have any questions, you can just let me know. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about the 5 essential components of reading. And so what we do is we teach all of these components because they're all a really important part of reading. Kindergarten and even the beginning of first grade really work on phonemic awareness and phonics. But today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about reading fluency and reading comprehension, and how to support your child with those things at home. Okay, so in first grade, your child is really taking off on reading. They grow so much in first grade. And so what I'm going to do today is teach you the decoding strategies that your child is taught, so that way you can help them at home. Now, I know as a parent, it's our intuition to just tell your child what that word is when they're stuck on a word. And sometimes that is necessary. But what do they do when they're at school or when they're reading by themselves? What do their teachers teach them to do? And so these are things that, and it's different language that you can use at home with your child to teach them how to figure out words on their own. And so when first graders as readers really rely on a lot of these things because they're just learning how to read. They're just learning how to decode words. They're using all of those phonemic awareness and phonics skills that they learned in kindergarten to really figure out who they are as readers and how to read. And so the first two decoding strategies that I'm going to talk about are Flippy Dolphin and Eagle Eye. And so Flippy Dolphin is just flipping the vowel sound. So you make a short sound into a long sound, or you make a long sound into a short sound, and it should make sense. And so, for example, if you have the sentence, the waiter brought us our food, and your child read it, the water brought us our food. Well, first of all, does that make sense? No. So let's flip the vowel. I used the short A sound when I first read this word. I'm going to use the long A sound. The waiter brought us our food. Does that make sense? Yes, that makes sense. Eagle Eye is looking at the pictures to figure out the word. And so pictures are a huge support for your child when they're reading. We really want them to look at the pictures to figure out what the words are and to help them understand what they're reading. Okay, the next strategy is lips the fish, and lips the fish is just getting your mouth ready to say the word and rereading to the end of the sentence and then going back and trying again. And so if I was going to read the sentence right here and get stuck on this word, curious, for example, your child may say, George was so that he just had to see what the noise was all about. What would make sense in that sentence? My mouth was ready. I said the first sound. Now what would make sense? And so that kind of goes with Skippy Frog, where you skip the word, read to the end of the sentence, and go back and try it again. George was so curious that he just had to see what the noise was all about. Does that make sense? Yes, that one does make sense. And so those are two other strategies that you can use if your child gets stuck on a word. Another one is chunky monkey. So you're going to look for chunks in the word that you know. So if your child gets stuck on the word alligator, well, I know that this word is all. I know this is gator. So can I figure that out? Alligator. And then stretchy snake is stretching out the words, slowly saying all the sounds that are in the word and then putting it together. Alligator. Alligator. The last two strategies are trying lion and helpful kangaroo. Now, trying lion is trying a word that makes sense and then trying again and again until it works. And so the sentence says, Jeannie B. Jones was so happy she gal all the way to the playground. She galloped all the way to the playground. So let's try a word. Does it make sense? Yes, it makes sense. So I don't have to try it again. And then the very last thing that they're taught to do is ask for help. After you've tried every other strategy, then they can ask you for help. Then you can tell them the word. Now there are going to be some cases where you are just going to have to tell them the word, probably because they don't know what that word means. And that's a great teaching opportunity for you to go back and teach the child, oh, that's the word galloped. Do you know how a horse gallops? It looks like this. All of those different strategies will help your child learn to decode words and make them a better reader. Okay, so there are many resources online that have these types of strategies on there. And then this is just a bookmark of the decoding strategies and then how they can cross-check it to make sense. Does it look right? Does it sound right? And does it make sense? And so this may be something good for you to have while your child is reading at home. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about is reading comprehension. Now, reading comprehension is acquiring strategies to understand, remember, and communicate what is read. When they're decoding those words, it's so important that they don't get tied up in that decoding, but that they actually are understanding what they're reading. So what does this look like in first grade? What does reading comprehension look like? Well, it looks like making predictions. What do you think is going to happen next? Why do you think that's going to happen? It's making connections. What does this remind you of? Has that ever happened to you? It is inferencing. Inferencing is kind of like making predictions, but it's using the clues in the text to figure out what is happening or what is going to happen. Retelling. Let's go back to the story and let's retell exactly what happened. That is a huge indicator to see if they can really understand what they're reading, is if they can retell the story to you in their own words. And then the last thing is character analysis. How do you think that character felt when this happened? Why do you think they felt that way? Have you ever felt that way? It's asking those deeper comprehension questions to get your child thinking, and so that way you can tell that they really understand what they're reading. So as far as reading at home goes, we want to make sure that we are doing all kinds of things that we can do to support your child in reading. So that includes doing things like picture walks, looking at all the pictures and figuring out what's going on. Reading out loud to your child. Go ahead and approach reading with your child as a fellow reader. Hey, I found this book on your bookshelf. Let's read it together. I wonder what it's about. If you approach them as a fellow reader instead of as a parent making them read, then it's more likely that they're going to want to sit with you and listen to you read or read to you than it is if you make them sit down and read. As you're reading with your child, be careful with the corrections and the compliments. You want to correct your child when it's necessary, but you don't want to over-compliment your child, because then it just becomes routine and it's just not meaningful for them. Choose a variety of texts. Some children will want to read fiction, fiction, fiction all the time. See if you can get some poems in there. Try to read some nonfiction, all different types of text. Or, if you found an interesting flyer in their folder, let's read this together. What does it say? Would you be interested in doing something like this? Just choose a variety for you to read, so that way they're not stuck on the same thing. And then it would get kind of boring. And when you do choose a variety, it becomes interesting because they're not sure what kind of book they're going to read the next time. Take turns reading when your child is ready. So you say, okay, I'm going to read this page and then you read this page, or we'll take turns reading sentences. Think out loud. Whenever you find yourself thinking about the text as you're reading, tell your child what you're thinking. Ooh, that part made me wonder what they're going to do next. Telling your child that you are thinking as they're reading is really going to help facilitate their thinking as they're reading, because really that's our goal as readers. We're going to think about what we're reading about. And then don't push the writing. If you're going to read with your child, read with your child. Let's not write about it, because that's just going to make reading a tedious task for them, and we don't want to do that. And then lastly, spill conversations over. If you read about a book during bedtime, talk about it the next morning and say, remember when this character did this? Wasn't that so neat? So just make sure that you're constantly talking about the books that you're reading about, keeping your child interested. So all of these things can help at home while you're reading with your child at home. And as a fellow parent, a lot of these things I honestly didn't think about. What are some things that we can do while we're cooking dinner? Let's talk about a favorite book. Putting that reading time into your nightly routine and making sure that it happens almost every day, because reading with your child at home is so important. You want to show them that reading is just as important also, because it is something that they're going to use for the rest of their lives. And then lastly, in first grade, the end of the year, your child is expected to be at a level I or J. And so in looking at what this looks like, your child will grow so much during their first grade year, from the beginning of first grade to the end of first grade. And so you're going to see a lot of different books coming home. And so what does this look like towards the end of the year? Well, it's going to be about 8 to 16 pages. They're both familiar and unfamiliar content. There's many 2 to 3 syllable words on the page. Sometimes there's 3 to 8 lines of text per page. They're in the higher level J. There's some abstract concepts that are highly supported by text and illustrations, and then there's many lines of print on a page. And so if you have any questions about this reading level or would like to see what it looks like, just please let me know. Thank you so much for listening, and we really hope that you have enjoyed it and you can use some of these tips with your child at home.